Hey.
What's up, Artie?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, check out some of these comments right off the bat. Look, Trevor Just, my hair's all done up for this. I don't know. Look at John. Newfoundland time, I'm assuming? No, John, it was 6:30.
We were right on time. We were right on 6:30.
Right on 6:30. Come on.
Is Newfoundland? I can't even say
half an hour. It's always half an
Okay.
hour. Salt of the earth, Newfoundland people. Salt of the earth.
Yeah, salt of the sea anyway.
All right, so we're going to talk monster games, eh?
We are indeed going to talk about monster games. I'm going to throw a tweet out here. So go ahead,
hey,
talk.
Tony, hello, Tony, you're alive. That's good to know. John, Newfoundland time. Where are you from, John? How do you know Newfoundland?
John's from Michigan. It's practically Canada.
You guys call it Newfoundland or Newfoundland?
But not as nice.
Do you call it Newfoundland?
I'd call it Newfoundland. I don't know.
It's Newfoundland.
I'm from Ohio, so we gotta, we mispronounce all kinds of stuff down here.
What do you got in Ohio? It's like Idaho's got potatoes. What is
we got? Kroger's and Aldi's and magical plurals that appear in the ends of names that don't actually have them.
What?
It's an Ohio thing. It's Kroger and Aldi. It's not Kroger's and Aldi's, and yet we say Kroger. I do it too. Kroger's and Aldi's. And we don't here at Central Ohio, at least we don't say warshed, which is a thing in parts of Ohio. I got to wash the laundry.
Wash. No. All right, man. Okay, so you know what? I was speaking to Robert Carroll today, and he said something interesting because we were just talking, and I said something about what is a war game, and here we go again. And he said, look, I'll give you an example. He said, U-boat is not a war game. Okay. Whatever, and he says, people have different scales of what is a war game. And he said, how do you know if it's a war game or not? I asked him, and he said, when I see it, I'll know.
Yeah, exactly. That's completely reasonable. I mean, it is actually, I'm only being a little bit facetious. It is a completely reasonable position for somebody to take, as long as they and whoever they're talking to understands that it is a completely individual decision that they are making to say that U-boat or Tri-Struggle or whatever it is not a war game. I am on record as being bored with this question for the most part. I mean, I complain about U-boat because, that's what I do.
Yeah,
but
I hear you.
I don't really feel like a lot of value can be extracted from answering this question.
I know, and it's a boring question, and then in essence, because oh my god. But anyways,
well, I mean, unless you're an asshole, then you're gonna be willing to say that to the other guy, it is a war game or it isn't a war or whatever, right? So once you're there, then it just becomes a semantic chess game that I don't think gives you anything important.
So you look like a John.
That's reasonable.
And even Uva said that he had I forget, he had a space game, and he wanted to run an ad, and I said, but Uva, is it a war game? He goes, look, if I take the miniature and whip it at you, is it a war game? Yeah.
Well, that's a bit of a loose definition, but so from the publisher standpoint, I mean, you could take the same approach with GMT. I mean, I certainly GMT does stuff that's not war games, but GMT exists in our space, as I think to a lesser extent does Academy Games, and therefore they market, to maybe other people too, but they market to war gamers. So why not include their space game as well?
Artie, you said you had a slideshow. Do you want to play that now?
It's already shared. You just have to push the button.
Oh, what's that thing at the bottom there? Okay, so here we go. And this is, talk to me, Artie.
Okay, so this is just some pictures that, I've accumulated, because I take a lot of pictures at events typically. So these are just pictures that I've accumulated of things that either I've been in over the last few years or have taken place at events that I've been in. This one is Third Winter, which is, of course, coming soon from Multiman. This is one of our couple of playtest games. I forget which one. Probably the one from Buckeye Game Fest a couple years ago. That's what it looks like.
Now, what is this again?
The OCS, The Third Winter.
Now, it's funny. Your name came up when I was talking with Robert Carroll.
Yeah.
And he actually said, "Oh, ARDWULF, he's an OCS freak."
Well, you know, that's what gets played around here. We're actually talking about doing something different once we get past the pandemic. So I'm in a couple of different groups here, right? And the only group that's actually happening right now, because everybody's had COVID already, is the OCS group. So if we were in normal times, I'd be in something else as well. So this is Ted Racer's The Dark Valley from GMT. This is the first edition. They did a second edition that has a different map.
This is a monster?
Marco Arnaudo says it is. I think it's borderline. I'd call it a mini monster. Because I think you could play it in a 4-day convention. And a true monster game, you'd need a longer event to play it at. This you could easily play for 12 hours a day for 3 days.
Okay, hold on.
And finish it.
You're saying so many things that I wanna address. First of all, you said this is a mini monster, Marco Arnaldo. I mean, he knows his stuff. The guy, I'm not gonna whatever.
Yeah, and you know, to some people, this is totally a monster game because it's something that you can't play in a sitting, unless the Germans totally collapse, which can happen in this game actually.
So what's there's no scenarios on here. This is the
World War II East Front. There are scenarios in the game, but there's no like one map scenarios or anything. It's a 2-map game, so it's not enormous, right? But it's got 800,000 counters, something like that. 840 counters sounds right. I might be misremembering that. So it's not a small game. I'd say you could play it to completion in 40 to 50 hours, something like that.
Now, you said something before. You said, it's really not, I'm paraphrasing, it's really not a monster or something because you can't play it in 4 days.
Well, you can play this in 4 days.
So what does that mean? Sorry, Artie. If a game doesn't play in 27 years, it's not a monster?
So, I mean, think of it in terms of how these games actually, which we should talk about this actually, because it's an important thing when we talk about monster games, is how do you play these things, right? So you need, I did a lot of extensive role playing in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. So I came from a place when we started talking about playing monster games, when I started thinking about it, where it was normal to have game night, and then everybody comes over on game night and you play for 4 or 6 hours, whatever it is, right? And then everybody goes home, and the next week you come back and do it again. So to continue playing the same game over and over and over again over the span of weeks or months or even a couple of years was natural. The big difference is a role-playing game, you pack it all up and go home. This you have to leave set up. Now there's Vassal 2, where you could leave it set up in Vassal and maybe not have a physical space dedicated to it. So to do a monster game, you need a space that can be left alone without numbskulls walking by and moving pieces, or pets walking around jostling the tables and eating the cardboard, for a period that could, for a home game. If we played this on our game night, it would probably take us 2 months to playing 3 or 4 hours a night weekly.
Really, eh?
Yeah, something like that. But we've also played other stuff that takes a year and a half, right? So I may have a picture of that. This was at a convention. So in terms of playing it at a convention, right, there are kind of 2 scales of convention in terms of how long the event is and how much gaming you can squeeze into it. There's the 3 and 4 day conventions, like your Origins and your Gen Con and your Historicon, I think, is another one of those. And then there's the longer events, which are all war game events, like your WBCs and your Consum World Expos, that are like 7, 8, 9 days, when you could play this, get farther along in something like this. I could play this twice in 8 days.
Now, Artie, the thing is,
that's why I call it a mini monster. That is like not official, but that's why I mean,
look, I just noticed it's on 2 tables, so it's a pretty large map.
Oh yeah, it's two standard sized war game maps.
And now, if I were to play a monster game, because you said in my life I have to play a monster game once. Now, let's say we go to WBC and hey, there's a monster game. Am I stuck playing this game once I start for 9 days, or can I go speak to someone and go to the washroom or something?
So that's a thing that is another fact that you have to consider when you're going to undertake the task of playing a monster game. I mentioned on some recent show, I forget where when we play OCS, we'll go back to OCS here. So when we're playing Third Winter at Buckeye Game Fest, we're playing a team game. There's 2 people to a side, 2 German players, 2 Russian players. We're the German players. When we finish, we say, okay, our turn's done. It's your turn. We'll be back in an hour or an hour and a half. And then we'd come back in an hour and a half, and we'd still have 30 or 60 minutes left of the other person moving stuff. Now, the turn sequence in OCS is somewhat interactive, that the other player has to be there for things like overruns and things. But you can also get all the regular movement done without the other person's direct participation. Not all games are. Some game systems are more interactive than that and do require people to be kind of at the table the whole time. But of course, they take breaks, right? They're not actual lunatics. Sometimes they are actual lunatics, but I mean, you take players where you can get them. But I mean, they'll take they play for 4 hours, they'll take a break, they'll play for another 4 hours, they'll go to dinner, they'll come back, play for 2 hours. That's a pretty typical war game.
So what about the other games you want to play at WBC?
Well, so another thing we did during this game actually is we had a side game set up of Der Weltkrieg that was like a little, it's modest 1 map game. That we would, it was the other guy's turn. We'd sit there and play Der Weltkrieg for an hour. And we'd get a couple of turns, because it was relatively way smaller than this, right? We'd get a couple of turns done, and then it'd be time to hop back over to OCS. And that way, also, we're right there if we, the other guy says, okay, I'm going to do an overrun, or I'm going to do this airstrike or something like that we have to be available for. So in a sense, we're kind of multitasking here. We're not totally focused on one game, which is kind of the appeal of playing the monster game in a big convention format in the first place. But at the same time, you don't necessarily want to have, that much idle time either. I mean, I'm happy to have idle time at a convention, and I can go shop and talk to people and walk around and take pictures and stuff. That's all cool.
Yeah.
But you do that for 4 or 5 days, and suddenly you're walking around for 8 hours a day, and it seems it's hard on my feet, man.
No, I understand, and because go back to the OCS map, Artie. Look in the middle. There's some sort of leaning tower of Pisa of chits. Now,
so in the case of OCS,
Artie, there's gotta be a better system than that, man.
In the case of OCS, that is almost certainly a stack that contains either aircraft or supply, which means that it is probably going to be behind the front line. The front line hexes tend not to have as much stuff stacked in them. There's an incentive to minimize stacking to whatever extent you can in OCS. In that. If you overstack, so 10 regimental equivalents is the stacking, which is, depending on the nationality, is, anywhere between 2 and 4 divisions and maybe a couple odds and ends. But if you're stacked that high, you're taking a massive penalty if you get an artillery strike on that hex. So you don't really want to do that. OCS, for some reason, a lot of games will have an off-map holding box. So you'll have a 2nd Panzer Division will have one counter on the map, and then you have all the constituent units of 2nd Panzer Division off to the side somewhere. OCS has never been big on having those off-map displays. People do it anyway. We do it anyway. But that helps quite a bit. But, I mean, in games that have it, sometimes it doesn't help that much because the stacking's super high anyway. I mean, Europa has the core markers for that kind of stuff, and Europa is in. I might have Europa pictures in here somewhere. Europa is infamous for its ludicrously high stacks. This is not, I mean, you see high stacks because that's what your eyes are drawn to, but the high stacks are not the stacks you're digging into constantly. The stacks on the front line are the ones you're digging through all the time.
Well, what about, can't you do any bookkeeping instead of having all those stacks? Need those stacks be visible, or can you just have bookkeeping and not have that?
So there are games that have done that. I would use as an example the original Great Battles of the American Civil War series, like Terrible Swift Sword, the SPI Terrible Swift Sword, where you had like strength points in the regiments. The counters are regiments, right? And you would actually have check boxes to check off the losses as the unit's strength was eroded away through combat or whatever. Some people prefer that. Some people prefer to deal with it with counters. I know that there are games that use what are called pollard markers, which are those little rotary counters where there's like 4 numbers facing in each of the directions, and you like rotate the counter to match the facing of the counter on top of it, and then that'll tell you whether there's 9 strength points or 8 strength points or so or whatever. The current version of Line of Battle does that. The Mike Resch 1914 World War I series does that. BCS does that. Like Great Battles of the American Civil War in its current edition from GMT, and Great Battles of History uses strength markers. You have like strength points. It works the same way, except you have to change the counter out every time because it's just one value on it. So some people would prefer to have a clipboard where they have all their things, and then as you lose strength points, you check the boxes off. So yeah, that is the thing.
Yeah, because that little rotary thing adds complexity right away for me.
So I thought that was going to be a really, really inconvenient, and then we played Line of Battle, which uses them, and it really wasn't as bad as I'd feared that it was going to be. Now, where it gets to be a problem is if somebody, you know, sneezes and blows a whole part of the line open, and then you got to like put it back together as best you can.
Does that legitimately happen for real?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, so I was like, I had like a stack of player aid cards or something like that, and I went and set it down on the table.
And they all
didn't, and they all it slid right under a whole section of the front line and blew the whole front up. So I was like, oops.
Now what happens? What happens with that?
You put it back together as best you can. Either from memory or sometimes some players will like take pictures every turn. One of the guys we play OCS with takes pictures every turn, in part because he wants to, and in part because sometimes it's handy. When I say, you know, Mark, where's this unit? It clearly this is not where it was supposed to be, and then he'll look at the picture and say, okay, it's supposed to be over here.
All right, man, go ahead.
All right, so the Dark Valley. This is Balance of Powers from Compass and designer, I think Mike Gorkowski, John Gorkowski, whatever Gorkowski's first name is. And this is a pretty fun game. We played this at Buckeye Game Fest a couple years before that. The big stacks that you see here, like in Italy, for example, that is like Italy's not in the war yet. And we just like put all Italy's starting forces in Italy, and then they will deploy them when they declare war.
Okay.
Where you see on the west front there, that's I think stacking, as I recall, it's been a while. It's like 3 or 4 units, and they're core-sized units in this game. This is a 3-map game. This is another one that probably a 40-50 hour game. You could play this in an Origins 3 or 4 day convention, something like that.
And okay, Artie, yeah. Okay, hi, Artie. Let's go to Buckeye. Okay, Dan, let's play this game. Is this this game I'm looking at right now? Can I just play the game like without any complications? Is there jargon in the monster game that's not available in other games?
Not necessarily. Sometimes, sure, but I mean, that's game system by game system. So if you look at something like not OCS, SCS, the Standard Combat Series, it's got pretty minimal jargon, pretty minimal acronyms. There's a few, but it's 8 pages of rules. You could teach it to a 7-year-old in an hour. and then you're playing. And there are legit monster games that use that system. There's at least 2 that are out. The It Never Snows, which is a huge market garden game. There's this is Balance of Powers from Compass. There's the new North Africa game that's on there, pre-ordered right now. That's coming pretty soon. That's going to be pretty big. And there's Day of Days, which is a big D-Day game, company level D-Day game that takes like 5 maps or something like that. Takes a while to play that too.
And hold on a second, that Day of Days, and I hate talking money. 5 maps and how many counters?
A lot. It's I don't know, but it's a lot. It's at least 5 counter sheets.
So, and we're talking. I think I seen it on sale for like $114 as a pre-order price. Is that possible?
Well, it's been out for years. So
what's the new one coming out? MMP
for SCS, the North Africa. I think it's just called North Africa.
No, there's a new monster game coming out.
It's MMP, of course. Which one are we talking about?
You see.
There's a whole list of them. I think you might be talking about the third winner, which is
that's it.
4 maps, 10 counter sheets, as I recall. So that's a huge game, right? Nobody's arguing about whether that's going to be a monster.
Okay,
game,
so I mean, what a steal in terms of components for $100 and something bucks.
Well, I mean, I'm going to get my play value out of it. That's for sure. I've already put 80 hours into third winner, and it's not even out yet. So, and I'm just absolutely spitballing that number, of course. But I expect to get like $1 per hour spent entertainment. I totally anticipate getting my money's worth out of third winner, and honestly, any other OCS game that comes out, because we'll play it like more than once.
No, but still, Artie, I mean, for all that material. For I think it was $114.
140, as I recall.
Okay, even then, man, come on. How many maps?
4 maps.
Huge maps.
4 maps, 2,800 counters. That sounds right.
Wow, come on, man.
That's huge. And you're going to get, if you play the campaign, I'm guessing here. If you play like the grand campaign of that, you're probably looking at 100 to 200 hours. So if you break that $140 that you paid, or even if you pay $200 for it, if you pay retail after it comes out, you're still paying like $1 an hour to have fun playing a game.
I mean, that's cheap.
You can't get a cup of coffee for $1 anymore.
No,
not even here in America.
Whatever. But another thing, the amount of research that goes in here, this obviously is not from scratch. These people, I don't know who designed this, but the knowledge must be vast, because if you're gonna, is this an MMP game?
This one's from Compass.
Okay. I think if MMP puts out a game and the game is not historically accurate, I think that the designer is going to get shellacked. More so for MMP than Compass. Am I right?
Maybe, yeah. So, I mean, it's hard. We're going to start now talking about the structure of the development chain in different companies, and it's different for different companies.
Okay, so
I can tell you for MMP, so there's like multiple different development groups that feed product into MMP, the publisher, right? So you've got the gamers side of things, which is Dean Essig and the guys who are running OCS now, and the people who are running whatever other game series are operating concerns now. And then you have the ASL guys, who are different guys. And then you have somebody handling the GTS. I think that's being run by the guy that did Front Toward Enemy, is the honcho for GTS now. So you've got those, and they're different people again. You've got
Joe Chacon.
Joe Chacon, yeah, that's absolutely right. He's running the GTS show, and whatever other series they have going on. There's different people involved in those, so they're they're different audiences, right? The ASL audience is not the OCS audience, and my local OCS guys mostly hate GTS, so they're different people. So it really depends, and the same thing's true of GMT, right? They don't really have in-house design. They have a bunch of different designers designing different games.
Yeah. But I mean, is there a different mindset when designing a monster game as opposed to designing a non-monster game?
Yeah, I think there probably. I mean, I'm probably not the person to answer the question, but I think there probably is, because when you say we're gonna sit down and play Balance of Powers here, we are committing the next 50 hours to playing this thing. It's not a 2-hour. It's not a Holland 44, which is not a super quick game, but you could play it in a sitting, right? You play it in an afternoon, long afternoon. So you're committing a lot to it when you sit down to play these things. And if you get into World War I breaks out in August 1914, if by the time you hit June of 1915, if the game completely falls apart just because the dynamics don't work right, then you're going to end up with a monster game that has a bad reputation. Let me put it that way, because the monster gamers will find that out, right? So, and sometimes they play it on Vassal. Sometimes they play it at big conventions, and sometimes you got local guys with big basements and big table setups in basements and no cats. So wargamer's best friend is a wargamer who's allergic to cats.
Go on, man.
All right, so this is in some sense, the biggest of biggest. Case Blue. This is the northern half of Case Blue, actually.
Well, this is the biggest of the biggest?
Well, I don't know if it's the biggest of the biggest. I suspect that there are actually larger games. I think TSWW Singapore is actually bigger in terms of map space, but not in terms of counters. So this is the northern half. This is the southern half. This is both of them. So this is 8 main maps plus 2 maps off the north edge that are GB2 maps, plus a map of the Crimea, plus another map somewhere. So it's 10 maps total. You can't put this on one table and reach the middle. We had to break it up into 2 tables. So, and we played this for about 9 months.
How many people?
4.
4 independent factions, or
2 on 2. Yeah, we could have accommodated. It actually would have gone faster if we had 6 players, 3 on 3 instead of 2 on 2. But it was 2 on 2, 2 Germans, 2 Soviets. Again, I was playing the Soviets on the southern map. So
this is Case Blue, right?
Yep.
Any diplomacy involved in here?
Nope, not at all. No. However, there's fog of war. There's a fog of war rule in OCS that is very simple. You may not look through other people's stacks. You can see the top combat unit. Technically, you're only supposed to see the top combat unit if you have somebody adjacent to it. But you don't know what's at the bottom of the stack. You don't know if it's an HQ. You don't know if it's a supply. If there's supply there, you don't know anything other than the top combat unit. And if there's active air in the hex, you're supposed to be able to see that as well. So there's no diplomacy, but there's a decent amount of mental effort involved in trying to fool the opponent, right? You're putting one over on them. This happened. I don't know. This is probably too long ago for me to remember this, but we had that exact thing came up a couple of weeks ago in the Hungarian Rhapsody game, where the Germans launched a major counterattack on the Soviets, and my opponent was somewhat surprised to find that under every single one of those hexes that he was attacking was a Soviet mech corps. So, oops. So there is a definite you can and are encouraged to deceive your opponent. And in OCS, sometimes I forget and miss stuff. I hide everything. I put HQs on the bottom. I put extenders on the bottom. I put multi-unit formations on the bottom. I don't want any of that. I put the crappiest thing I have in the stack generally goes on top, unless I want the opponent to think that it's a very powerful stack, in which case I'll put a powerful unit on the top. So there's definitely a mental game going on there, but I wouldn't call it diplomacy.
Okay.
This photo doesn't belong in here. So what this is called Ostfront, and it's OCS as well. And what it is 3 OCS games, each of which are 4 map games, plus a 1 map extension for the Crimea, that when it's all out, which will be years from now, will cover the entire East Front of World War II at 5 miles to the hex, divisions on down scale. God. from September of 1942, September of 1943 to about April of 1944.
5 months. That's huge.
Yep. And we're talking 3 games plus like an add-on kit. So
once, let's say you set all this up, someone's, I mean, look at the room. Who's got the house for that? But anyway,
yeah, this is Winterfest, which is a week-long event.
And can you play this in a week?
No, absolutely not. I mean, you may be able to reach a conclusion in a week, but you're not playing it till the end of till the turns run out. That's not happening.
Okay, so there's no end goal here. So what's the
sure
point?
there is. So I mean, this is what they're doing here is play testing because none of this is out yet. But
okay,
now the middle section of this is the third winter, by the way. That's not true. The southern section, the southern third of this is the third winter. The middle section is Forgotten Battles, and the northern section is Hero City, which is the Leningrad sector. So I mean, you may have individual scenarios. I guarantee, without talking to Tony, the designer, that Tony's the guy in the front who looks like he's dancing in this picture. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there will be a robust scenario selection with each of which will have its own victory conditions. I'm not sure. I wasn't in this game, so I'm not sure what they did. I thought they just set the campaign up and they got as far as they got. So, and then, then Tony will go back as the designer, will take that information and say, okay, we need to tweak the supply. Here's like a first approximation of adjustments that need to be made. And in an OCS game in the development process, that's one of the things that happens kind of constantly, is that supply gets tweaked up and down and left and right and forwards and backwards. So, and this stuff does get played. So somebody, Blue Pulsifer, said monster games never get play tested relatively recently. And I'm like, sure they do. I mean, so some of them don't, to be honest. It is more difficult. There are huge challenges to play testing these things. Because they're so much trouble to set up. Now, we have advantages now where we have big conventions and we have Vassal and things like that, and that helps a lot. But I mean, strictly from an OCS standpoint, they're basically all monster games to one extent or another, and they play test the pants off of this thing. Third Winter's been in playtest for like 7 or 8 years now, and it's been getting constantly playtested that entire time. So it's not true to say monster games don't get playtested, but it's absolutely challenging to get them playtested. And there are definitely examples of monster games that have obviously not been play tested. So this I'll point one out from a company that doesn't exist anymore, so we can mock them with impunity, is Fresno Games Association's The Eagle and the Sun. It's sort of their take on the War in the Pacific type of game, and it's infamously not playable at all. They clearly didn't test it in any way.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it's kind of a design your own War in the Pacific kit, to be honest.
This game, going back to this game here, this OCS game,
it took them all day to set this thing up.
It took them all day to, so
with like 6 people setting this up too. So yeah, I mean, it took us about 24 man hours to set up case. 4 people, 24 man hours to set up Case Blue. So that means that 4 of us sat there for 6 hours setting it up, and this took probably twice that, I would think. So even the setup can take a lot of time, and
I mean, that's an issue in itself. I mean, my God, I understand. What was I going to say? So this game is 7 years. It's been in production. I
was talking Third Winter. The Forgotten Battles started being tested, I think, in 2019. So Forgotten Battles, the middle third here, has been in production testing for a couple of years. Call it 2 years. Third Winter, which is going to be out soon, has been in playtest 7 or 8 years that I'm aware of. I mean, I've been seeing it getting playtested for 7 or 8 years.
This is without it being published once. Is that right?
Correct.
So obviously, this is not a money venture for these guys.
Oh no, nobody's making.
No, but I'm just saying, my God, 7 years, bloody hell! What are they going to sell the game at, for $5,000?
Well, yeah, in terms of like the amount of effort that goes into these things, and this is a bigger question than monster games, really. This is true of even of much smaller games.
Yeah.
In terms of the amount of effort that has been poured into these things, no one is getting remotely minimum wage.
I know.
Per hour. I mean, look at Time for Trumpets, right? Bruno's been working on that thing for how long now? 15, 20 years? Something like that?
Seriously?
Something like that. Yeah, he's been working on that thing forever. And it just, you know, he finally, somebody wanted to publish it. So Bruno said yes, and now it's out. But he'd been working on that for years. You know, he probably put 5,000 hours into that thing.
So now, Artie, in terms of investment, you know, buying games, reselling them in a couple of years, Time for Trumpets is a hell of an investment then.
That's one reason I picked it up, to be honest. I haven't touched it yet other than to
open
it up and ogle it. I paid
like about 100 and something bucks, right?
Yeah, I paid about $100 for it, which is a steeply discounted price. I think its retail price is about $150.
Even then, man.
And that's a $200 game, or $200 to $300 game from anybody but GMT too. So it's 10 count. Was it 10 counter sheets? Something like it's huge.
That's insane.
5 maps, 8, 10 counter sheets. And they're not even small counters. They're 5/8 inch counters or 9/16 inch counters. So it's an enormous game.
That's
now at the, you know, you're right. Something like that or Under an Iron Sky, you know, you wait a couple of years, sit on it if you want to. I mean, I don't really ever go into buying a game for this reason. But sometimes I'm talked out of selling a game for this reason. But you sit there for a couple of years, it goes out of print, and then suddenly it's worth $300, $400, $500.
That's unbelievable. And the thing is, when it's worth $300, $400, $500, you still don't want to get rid of it.
Yeah, that's true. You know, you got to have a retirement plan, right?
You know what
nobody gets a pension anymore.
And then, like Judd Vance said, and then they reprint it. So whatever.
Yeah,
anyway,
here's Time for Trumpets.
Go ahead.
Time for Trumpets.
This is it.
This is it. Yeah, this was Buckeye Game Fest. Bruno came over to not to Buckeye Game Fest, to Winterfest in Sandusky, Ohio, a couple years ago, and ran 2 tables of Time for Trumpets, and this is one of those tables. So, and as you can see, the playtest components are really pretty nice. I think the production pieces are a little nicer.
Who
but
did the map?
I want to say the map was originally done by Joe Youst, but then Joe was not involved in the final stages of publication, and I think Mark Simonich went over it. I think.
I like the map.
I do too. It's a beautiful game. This is Atlantic. Speaking of Joe Youst, this is Atlantic Wall. This is a game I was in. So this is 3 maps on the top table. I think 4 maps on the bottom table. This is the whole thing. So we split it up into 2 tables because it's just easier to deal with this way. The front table we're like close enough on that front table so that we could very easily see all the pieces. It was a luxuriously set up game. You notice it's just one table up front with a little extension made out of chipboard of some kind for that Cotentin map.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really nicely set up to accommodate play of this thing. And this is a huge game too. I don't think I have any other pictures of this one in this folder. This is This Terrible Sound, which is the old gamers regimental level Chickamauga game. And this is 4, 6 maps or something. It looks like 6 maps. I was not in this one either.
That's not a Barber map, eh?
No, this is going to be a Dean Essig map, I would assume. It's Dean's. I'm not sure Dean did this game, but I'm pretty sure he did the map. So, and then this is Baltic Gap, which is a 2 map but monster OCS game. Even if an OCS game is 2 maps, it tends to still be a monster in terms of the number of hours it takes to play it if you're playing the whole thing.
I mean, and I'm not even going to get into the strategy involved to play this. I'm just looking at that, Artie. It does look complex, man. I mean, come on.
So, I mean, OCS specifically is a fairly complicated game, but it's not an extremely complicated game. I mean, it's got a 60-page rule book with an index, but it's a very clearly presented rule book. It's an easy rule book to read. Not that we never have arguments about it, but that's because we do this every week. It's not. I could teach you. I'm completely confident. I could give me a couple of days. I could teach you to play OCS at a reasonable level. There's a lot going on here beyond the rules, though. So you need to understand not only how the supply rules work, for example, but then you need to look at the map and do your terrain analysis to figure out, here's where my supply routes need to go. So then this particular route becomes my axis of advance. So you've got to be able to put all that together to play OCS. Rules-wise, it's not that bad.
Yeah, I don't think I have the mindset of strategically to play a game. I wouldn't even know where to start. Look at that. Everything, there's like a bell curve happening of both opponents are happening there, okay? And how much, like, I don't even know what to say. Like, the sequence of play of something like that must be ridiculous.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes not. This is an example where the sequence of play is actually very straightforward. This is GTS Market Garden, the Devil's Cauldron, and Where Eagles Dare. I want to say they had about 7 or 8 people playing at this table. This was one year where we had 2 games of this set up at Winterfest. And it's huge, right? It's like 15 feet long by I don't know how many feet wide. It's a huge game. And yet the sequence of play, because of the structure of the rules, is relatively straightforward. You have like an initial phase of the turn. It's like a 2-hour turn, 2 hours of game time, that is. And then you have this action phase where you draw chits out of a cup, and then you act. You know, whoever draws that chit gets to take their turn.
So that's the initiative play. That's the initiative play.
Yeah, but that's pretty much the sequence of play right there. There's like 4 things in it, right? You got an initial phase, an action phase, and an end phase, and that's pretty much it. OCS has like 7 or 8 different phases, but there's other games like Gauss that have even more complicated turn structure. Also, off the top of my head, say the East Front series from GMT designer Vance von Voorhees. That game series has an asymmetric sequence of play. So the Germans take their turn and they use this sequence of play, and then the Soviets take their turn and they use this different sequence of play. Like the stuff happens in a different order in the 2 turns. The Soviets have stuff that they have to be concerned about, like headquarters. The Germans didn't even have headquarters. The Germans have to be concerned about stuff that the Soviets don't have to be concerned with. So that makes it even more complicated. So, but just the monsterness of this doesn't necessarily equate to complexity. Like I said, there's 2 OCS, not OCS. I did it again. SCS monster games that are, you could learn to play in half an hour.
Oh, really?
And off you go. Yeah, absolutely. It's 8 pages of rules. If you have a vague familiarity with basic wargaming concepts, like it costs movement points to move through hexes, and there's zones of control. Simple. That's pretty much the whole game. I mean, there's not much more to it than that. There's another one of those coming, and I'm sure there are other examples of simple monsters. I mean, actually, this not particularly this is a 16-page rule book. It's not that complicated. It's one of the reasons why I think it holds up as well as it does, to the extent that it does, is that it wasn't at the time in '76 when they did it. They weren't trying to overdo it. They were consciously trying to keep it as simple as possible, and it's not super simple, but it's not complicated either. So,
well, we got to define what simple and complicated. We have to have a baseline of something. But
everybody's going to have a different point of view on that. My tolerance for complexity tends to be relatively high. That is a position that is not without its drawbacks, right?
I don't understand. What do you mean by that?
I mean that sometimes I will say this game looks interesting and it's a really complicated game, and then it will turn out to be a really difficult task to figure it out because it's complicated, right?
Is it because the rule book is no good?
Sometimes, yes. That is specifically, I was going to say Gauss as the example of that, and that rule book, the new rule book is quite a bit better. The rule book at the time was made of poop, so bad rule book. So and that is a factor, but it's easier to get through a bad. It can, well, maybe not, right? So, Crown of Roses, game from GMT on the War, the block game from GMT on the War of the Roses. This is not particularly complicated. The rulebook's not that big. I've seen several groups bounce off that game because of the rulebook. So the rulebook a bad rule book can make it difficult to get into and learn even simple games, relatively simple games. So there was I'm not going to remember who told me this, but some industry person that I talked to at an Origins years and years ago said the best thing I ever did as a game designer was have somebody else write the rule book.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, they wrote the rules and then handed it to somebody else, and the other person wrote the rule book.
That's right. Yeah.
So, and that's probably a good idea. And that was one of the guys from AEG, as I recall, but I forget who it was. Stalingrad 42 is kind of a mini monster. Yeah. Phil Buzkowski?
Yeah, now you got me saying it. Yeah.
McCabsky. Phil McCabsky says, not sure it counts as a monster, but Stalingrad 42 is playable and not too complicated. He's got to be from Chicago with a name like that, or Cleveland.
Come on, man.
Wait,
don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
We've got a lot of Eastern European people and their fabulous food in Cleveland, Ohio. So.
Oh man, come to Montreal for different variety of foods. But
it's a metropolitan city, I'm sure. You get the poutine up there, the real poutine. Oh, he's from Buffalo. Buffalo, same thing, actually. Oh, that's one of those Midwest belt cities. That's sort of the vowel shift country in along the Great Lakes, runs from basically like not too far west of Chicago up to Buffalo, pretty much.
The vowel shift.
That's an actual thing.
Yeah, I know. But that happened in the 1500s or something, man.
No, it's still going on. Actually, it's like the biggest sound shift in the English language since in the last 600 or 800 years or something.
Oh, jeez.
Still going on. Middle northern cities vowel shift. I was gaming at one point with linguistics majors, which is how I heard about that.
Okay. Go on.
So rat sandwich. So I don't have any more pictures. I think this might be the last one, actually. Yeah, this is GTS Market Garden. We play. This is a fantastic time playing this thing. This is another one that's not that complicated, really. The rule book is not the clearest rule book. So in GTS's case, I think the rule book is a little harder to parse for many wargamers than it otherwise could be, because it doesn't really use the case format, like the classic SPI case numbered rules. It kind of is more of a just kind of general flow manual type of way to present the rules. And I think that I feel like that made it a little more difficult, but it's not particularly complicated. This is another one where I could teach you how to play relatively easily.
And it's funny, eh? This is it's not a spectator sport, that's for sure.
No. So Monster Gaming tends not to be a good spectator event. I mean, in some sense it is, but like for drive-by spectators that come by, take pictures, maybe ask a question or two, and then wander off and look at something else.
Exactly.
You're not going to sit here and watch like these guys playing for 5 hours. I mean, I wouldn't. And I do this. I might actually, if it was like YouTube and I could watch it half an hour at a time, I might do it.
Yeah, I know.
But I have a taste for the exceptionally boring. So I think normally it would be difficult to watch. That's why I don't do monster game like live play content, because it's terrible content.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't have what is it, World in Flames?
I have not set up World in Flames since I bought it again, and I don't have any pictures from before I sold it. Now, we've played World in Flames, but that was in like the 90s. So, and then I sold it off and then bought it again when the new edition came out.
Is it a simpler system, or is it just as monstrous as everything else?
Well, I mean, the question I would want to ask is, what does it accomplish? And what is its complexity level in comparison to other games that are intended to accomplish similar things? So we're look at it and we say that, okay, it's a strategic level World War II game that covers both the Egyptian and Pacific theaters, and maybe some other parts of the world if you have the expansion maps and stuff like that. Okay, so look at the games that do that. There's a World at War, which is the GMT thing. Mm-hmm. There's the War from Compass, which is getting its Pacific volume fairly soon, next couple of months, as I recall. There's the Axis Empires games from Decision Games. And there's various out-of-print things. Like
what about that company, TWWW?
That's a completely different ball of wax, because that's an operational game. The and I mean, all of the games I just mentioned have some operational flavor.
So it's not a monster?
Oh no, they totally are. Right. But they're showing you something very different than what World in Flames or World at War is. So for me anyway, and part of this is rule book presentation, and part of it is just massive rules. World in Flames is far simpler and easier to deal with than a World at War. Way easier.
And does that diminish the gameplay?
Maybe it does in some cases, but I don't think it does in this case. I think you get, I believe that, I mean, the two games are a bit different, right? You're going to get a somewhat more structured along historical lines game of the war in a World at War. World in Flames is a little more sandboxy, where you could do something weird and end up with something that dramatically does not resemble the historical World War II. So it's a mistake to compare them too directly, but no, I don't think there's a natural, this one's better than the other. I mean, different people will say, I like this one better than the other one, and that's fine. There's people that swear by a World at War, and I've got both. I really haven't tried to play a World at War. I played Advanced Third Reich back in the day, but that's been 30, I don't know about 30, but it's been 20 years, and the current version of those rules baffles me. Where I bought the new edition of World in Flames, started reading the rules, and I'm like, yes, this is, and it's been just as long, and it was familiar. So,
oh God, I was gonna say something. I forgot. Artie, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was done.
No. What was I gonna say? Oh man. Any monster games that are card assisted?
Yes. Well, okay. So again, we're kind of falling prey to the what exactly is a monster versus a mini monster versus blah, blah, blah. But yes, the Axis Empires games from Decision, especially if you play the whole war, I would call that certainly a mini monster and maybe a monster. It could take you a whole 7 or 8 day convention to play the whole thing. And that is a card, it's not card driven, but it is a card assisted game, where there are like political events that you play that affect the game in various ways. They affect the production, or the ability of some country to become an ally of your major power, for example. And you play the cards to activate those events. But it's not like a Paths of Glory thing where you have points on the card and then you play the card and spend the points. So they're just events, pretty much.
Unconditional surrender. You didn't mention that.
Well, that doesn't have cards.
No, I'm sorry. I'm going back to monster games.
Okay, so I would call Unconditional Surrender a mini monster, because again, I've seen people play it in 2 days at Origins.
Okay,
but a lot of people, I mean, we're talking about people that play it regularly too. So a lot of people, it's about a 50-hour game. So sure, I mean, if that fits into the monster category, then sure, I'd call it a monster. It's 2 maps, decent number of counters, no real stacking.
Artie, we have about 8 minutes left.
My snob's definition of monster game is that if you don't need tweezers for it, it's not a real monster game.
Seriously?
Well, that's my snob's definition.
Yeah. I mean, talk to Carl Paradzi about tweezers and small counters. Anyways,
my other tweezers.
Yes, of course.
I've got a whole drawer full of tweezers right here.
Is there a classic go-to war game, classic go-to monster war game?
Good question. Maybe classic examples of monster games are just going to be, I would say the first ones I would think of would be that first generation of monster games. So we have Dragnok Austin and Untenscheiden from GDW and La Bataille de la Moskva from GDW. You have War in the East, and then later War in the West and War in Europe from SPI. There's another one that came around in that same period. These are the classic sort of monsters. And
have they evolved?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think so. I mean, there's a huge difference between somebody that has somebody does a monster game cold nowadays, I think the design is vastly different from what it was in 1975, for example.
Like
and you can
Third
see,
Reich kind of thing.
Yeah, Third Reich. Well, is Third Reich a monster game? The original Third Reich? I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
But again, you know, you take 20 hours to 30 hours to play it. Sure. I mean, sure. I'm okay with that. It's one map, you know, it's 4 maps, but it's one map's in size. It's not a huge number of pieces, and the piece loadout is not complicated. You just have basically strength points. So Third Reich might come the closest to, as small as it is, it might come the closest to providing that experience, and yet have a lot of people have experienced it, right? Because it does take a while. Good entry-level monsters, Robert Carroll wants to know, and I would say take a look at the SCS monsters if that's your bag, the Day of Days, or It Never Snows, or the upcoming North Africa. If you have a hankering to get into something more complicated, then a GTS game is actually a good solution. Any GTS game except for the Devil's Cauldron has a wonderful selection of small to medium to large sized scenarios. You said
a more complicated. Does more complicated mean just adding extra variants, or just modularly putting more rules on?
In some cases, sure. In the case of like SCS versus GTS, though, not really. They're a different. The approach is very different. SCS intentionally, the Dean designed it this way on purpose, has a very traditional turn structure where you move, you do combat, you do exploit, and that's the basic turn structure.
Artie, give me an example of what a complex move or phase or something.
I'm glad you asked. Okay, so GOS, the Grand Operational Simulation Series. It's been a couple years since I've played it, so I might misstate some of this, but you'll get the gist of what I'm talking about. So built into the GOS system is that units cannot just move through other units, okay?
Wow.
If a unit is using road movement, it follows a different set of rules that happens at a specific time of the turn. I forget whether it's at the beginning of the movement phase or the end of the movement phase.
What is it? Just you get a half movement allowance more?
Yes, but you have to move those units one at a time, and they can't move through one another unless they get off the road. So what you end up with, because sort of as a natural evolution of that structure, is you have traffic jams, right? Which happened all over the place.
That's right.
In World War II. Happened in the Bulge, happened in Market Garden. This is why I'm very excited about GOS Market Garden. So units are moved individually, and sometimes as you're moving units, you have to make decisions like, okay, this other unit that's already moved, I can't just march through it. It's on the road, so I have to step off the road, which if you're like a leg unit movement type, like it's just guys marching, might slow you down, but it's not that big a deal. Whereas if it's like wheeled vehicles, it is a big deal. Maybe you can't do that, and they end up stacked 20 hexes deep back on the road. We might even have a picture of that, actually.
And that would be considered complex?
I would call that quite complex movement, yeah.
It's funny. It's just a situation you have to deal with. What's the complexity about it?
Well, okay, so and then in a game like ASL, right, where typically there are like monster ASL things, but the ordinary ASL play is something you can generally finish in a sitting. You can just move through a hex and say, I move through this hex. Or you could do, I'm going to assault move into this hex, which means that you spend your entire movement moving one hex, but it means you're low crawling through the hex. Or you can move through the hex, but you're going to use bypass movement to bypass the buildings or the woods or whatever, and you're going to go around them.
Okay.
Or you can say, I'm going to combat exhaust these units and get 2 extra movement points. So there can be a lot of variables.
Okay, so all the stuff that you said that you can do, it's not that like it's written on a cheat sheet or something. This is something that it's gained by experience. So
yeah, I mean, none of those individual rules that, or working on the ASL example here, none of those individual rules that I just mentioned are particularly complicated.
No.
The trick becomes, when can I do these things? And when do I want to do these things? Because it's a good idea in this particular situation that I'm in. So you have the complexity of learning those rules. And right there's like 6 or 7 rules that you have to learn, in addition to just the basics of how
just that,
works.
yeah.
But then you have to then learn how to synthesize those rules into tactics that are good tactics.
I understand.
As opposed to just stumbling your way around like a drunk, right?
Okay, so the thing is that me playing a war game the first time, forget it. I'm gonna be like a bull in a china shop, man.
Well, you know, that's a reason why. So there are ways to, yes, maybe, but there are ways to mitigate that too. So if Dan, if you were to come down here to Columbus, Ohio, and we were to stick you in our OCS game, we're not going to give you 2,000 counters to manage. We're going to say, okay, you're going to run the 2nd Panzer Corps, and you're going to have 3 HQs, maybe 4 HQs to run, and you're going to have maybe 20 units that are like divisions and formations, and then another 10 units that are like little battalions and tank battalions and stuff like that, right? So because we almost always play these things as team games, it's easy to manage that. It's easy to say, okay, so here is a sector that is slightly less critical than where the main thrust is going to go. So you know, Willie Bob is learning OCS. We're going to give him this, you know, this, I don't want to say backwater sector of the map, but sometimes that's exactly how it happens.
Well,
it's one of the challenges of playing monster games.
The thing is that I haven't gotten my fill of war game information. It's funny because there's a lot to learn. And the thing is that I'll never, in terms of experience, let's say I play you, I start today. In terms of experience, you keep learning, you keep experiencing more. I'll never reach your level of experience to make.
I don't know.
Come on, man.
I don't know. I mean, if you know, I don't necessarily buy that. I am at the point now where there are people that I know, not necessarily our local opponents, who are fairly hardcore OCS guys. I mean, I've only been playing OCS for 6 or 7 years. That sounds approximately correct. And I know guys who've been playing it for 15 who don't practice it as much as I do, because they don't play twice a week, every week, all the time. Okay. So I have totally caught up to those guys. I'm not even going to tell you where this was. I was one time walked past an OCS game on a table. I looked at the situation, looked at this guy. I'm like, look at the situation. It's like, man, you guys are super lucky. I'm not, because I could roll this up right now. Okay, and I'm not that good.
And that's cool, because that's experience, man. That's love.
So, yeah, but that's because that's the benefit of crunching on one system pretty hard for a long time.
Artie, we're calling it quits because I have to have my steak tartare with foie gras.
I had Chinese food, so.
And so did I this afternoon.
So, all right, so I got to go here too. So
Artie,
remember, next week, 6:30 on Eastern on Wednesday night, we will be on my channel, and we are going to talk about jargon and acronyms. Yep.
Thank you, people, for chiming in. I didn't go heavy on the things because I was asking. I mean, on the chat because I was asking questions, and we were all very verbose. And you know what? We had like 62, 63 people, man.
You're welcome, America.
Thanks, Artie. I'll see you next week, man.
All right, everybody have a great week.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to play the going out. I don't have a going out. You know what? Let me play the beginning again. See you, Artie.